Okay, so I went ahead and I finished this project. Now we need to actually get some title credits. So I'm going to put them at the end of the movie. And if I just hit this go to out, it'll go to the very end of the clips. And you'll see right here that we have, the way that it fades out. I'm dragging my playback head, okay? And so what I want to do is put my credit clip here. So you see that it ends in white. So we probably want to end up having a white background so it doesn't go to, flip over to black in some weird way. So I'm going to go up here where it says title, and I'm going to say new title, and I'm going to choose the default role. You could choose a crawl or something, but we're going to try using a role. It's a pretty standard one. And I'm going to give this a name of credit role. Okay, actually I'll call it credit title role. Okay, and it'll open up this new window here. And what I want to be able to do, see, it's already showing me a white background because I'm on that last frame. But the trick is that if I go to the next frame, it would, it's not necessarily going to be the same color of background. So we could do a couple of things. If you want, first of all, we could go ahead and try to do like a black text for the title, and you see that there are a whole bunch of options down here that are pre-selected options that you could choose from. I'm just going to go ahead and choose the Garamond. If you don't want to choose from this, the other thing that you can do is choose a different font entirely, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and just, with my text tool over here, I'm just going to click somewhere and start typing, and I will type the word credits. And if I select this word again, I need to make it bigger because right now it's seemingly pretty small. So over here where it says title properties, you'll see under properties, right? We've got font family and we've got bold and we've got font size. Let's make the font size to be significantly larger. Let's try 50, and that might not be quite as big as we want it to be, or it might be fine. So let's just see what 55 does. That's a little bit better. And what we can do then is go ahead and start typing some more stuff after that. And I could either type this whole thing out, or I could also copy from something else. So let's go to a text file that I already have all of my attributions saved. And I'm going to select all of these things, copy that. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it. And it's a ton of stuff, you see. And so I might look at that and decide that's, it's an awful lot of stuff. And so there's some different ways that you could address this. One is that I'm just going to take my move tool, this little arrow tool, and I'm going to scoot it over for right now. I'll show you how to align it in a minute, but let's go ahead and make this a little bit more manageable. So one of the things I kind of want to do is change the font. I think that this is a little bit heavy-handed for what I want. So I'm going to choose a sans serif, and I'm going to grab my text tool, and you can select all by doing either Command A on a Mac or Control A on Windows. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to find a font that I like. I have something in mind. I think I'm going to choose this Lao MN, and that seems something that's a little bit more appropriate for the style of video that I've got. And then the other thing too is that currently it's in bold, so I could choose to make that in regular. And then what I think I'm going to do is for like where it says credits, I'm going to make that in bold. And then for that particular one, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So right now it's about 65. I actually think that I like the size 65 for the main credits, but then for everything else, I can make that smaller. So in fact, actually what I'll do is I'll do a select all, and I'll make everything else a little bit smaller. So maybe about, let's try 55. And that's where it was before. And then let's go ahead and come up here for credits, and we'll make the credits larger. And we'll make that at about, let's see what it looks like at 70. All right. And now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and select the title areas, and I'm going to make that bold. Okay, and then for instance, like the Biley Cotner part, I dropped it down to the next line, but I'm going to keep it in a regular text. Where it says other video, I'll make that bold. And then music, I'll make that bold as well. And I will also do sounds as bold. And so they stand out a little bit more. And then the other thing that I think that I'm going to go ahead and do, and I can make this a little bit bigger so we can see it better, is I'm going to make these things wrap on purpose. So where it says wilting flower time lapse, and it's got the name, well, I'm going to go ahead and have that return, and then I'll put an extra return carriage in between each one of these, and that one's already got a return. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the, and I'm scrolling up, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and leave the web addresses for these because that's where they can be found. And I'll leave that one the way it is because this is actually the name of the album. It's not a web address, but I will drop it down to the next line. And then for this one, I will put the web address on the next line. And then I'm just scrolling because it's set as a roll. It'll scroll for me. I'll do the same here. And lastly, we'll do that. Okay, so this is how it will scroll when it scrolls. Now the other thing too that you'll notice is that I kind of arranged it already, but if you want to make sure that it fits perfectly centered, I can take my selection tool and then I can go over here and align it both ways. Okay, so you can do perfect vertical and horizontal center. And the next thing that I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and come up here where it says roll crawl options, this little button. It looks like a list with an up and down arrow. If I click on that, I'm going to keep mine as roll, all right? And then I'm going to say start off screen and end off screen. Okay, and then that way it'll crawl or roll up on the screen for me. And let's just go ahead and see what we've got there. And I'll close this. All right, and now you see over here in my project pane, I've got this thing called credit title roll, and now I can just drag it onto the timeline and put it after everything. And to make it longer, I can drag the thing out. Oops, let's try that again. There we go. I can drag it out so that it's a certain length. And if you want to make it go slower or faster, you either shorten it or elongate this on the timeline. So let's see what happens. And then you'll notice what's happening is we have a problem because it's on a black background. That's not going to work for us. Well, if we go ahead and come up here to where it says credit title roll, and the reason it looked like it was on a white background before was because I had the previous frame, which had a white background. I had that selected. So what you want to do is you want to take your selection tool. This is only if you need to change the colors around. So I can change this by selecting the background, and then over here under title properties, you see where it says background. I can click on that, enable it, and then now I can change the color of the background to be whatever color I want. So I'll tell it to be white, and so now we've got something that's white. Let's try that and see how that looks. So when we're here, let's go ahead and hit play. Now you might look at this and go, wait a second, we have a problem. It's getting cut off. All right. Well, let's go and address that. So if we go over to the credit title roll again, let's open that up again. And what had happened was I had vertically centered it, not just horizontally. We want it horizontally centered. Sometimes the vertical center will work just fine, but whenever you have this much material, it's going to put it off the screen. So what you want to do is you want to select the text. You use this move tool, and you're going to click. I'm holding shift to keep it constrained vertically, and I'm going to drag it, and you might have to drag it a few times to pull it down to where you want it to go. All right, and then you can check to see that it is going to work here. And then we can test to see what it's going to look like right there. Let's go ahead and close this, and we'll pull it. Let's try this again. And that pulled it off a little bit too much. Okay, so whenever it first did that bump, let me show you again. Let's go back in here so that you can get some idea. If I select this and if I do my vertical center again, this is where we were. And you'll notice that whenever I started to click and drag it down, and then I let go, it bumped up, just leave it there, okay? And then that way you can see that, let's back it up. Let's try that again. And then it starts to come up in a more reasonable manner of time, okay? Now, so you can do a few things. You could either have that start like that, so that you've got this overlapping a little bit, right? And then you can see if you do a fade in, so as this is coming up, it's going to look a little bit more natural. However, you're still going to have this cut line coming across it, so that might not be really that much better. So one of the things that you can do is draw a box. I'm going to come back here, and I can just double check if I want, and I can arrow down to make sure I'm at the beginning of the clip. And the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and add another title. Okay, so if I come back and let's go up here to title, and I can go to new title, and I'm just going to do default still, and we'll just call it still credits background. I'll just say BG for background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this rectangle tool, and I'm just going to draw a large box across it. Okay, and it can be big. It doesn't have to be the exact size or anything. And so I'll draw this white box. Now, if yours doesn't start off wanting to be white, what you want to do is come over here where it says title properties. You're going to select the fill option, and then go and then select the color. And so I could leave mine this sort of off-white, because I think that that's what the color actually is. I don't remember if I made it pure white or not. So let's go ahead and make it pure white, and then if it's not quite right, then we can adjust it. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And what I can do now is drop this in the timeline in the same spot, and then I can make it just as long. Let's see if I can get the thing to snap. There we go. Okay, and so now whenever it comes in, you see that it just fades in like this. So let's hit play. And then it does do like a visual jump. So if what you can do, I'm going to take both of these guys, I'm going to move them up in the timeline, and then I'm going to move the still credits in, because I want to start fading this in so that it appears before the credits begin to really start coming up. And I need to make sure that it's in full opacity before the credits start coming up. So I can do a test here, and let's just select the still credits, okay, because then if I bump this over a frame, you see that it's full opacity here. So I'm going to make sure that this thing starts at 0 opacity and then comes in a little bit later. So I'm going to move this, let's move it to about right here so that it comes into full opacity right about here, and we'll see how that goes. We'll make that keyframe, and then we'll drag it back to the beginning, make another keyframe that starts at 0. Okay, and then we'll see how that looks. And then the credits should start rolling. And it looks like they can roll a little bit sooner, so let's drag this in and see if that causes a problem visually. And it looks like we're okay. And the music stops right about the time the credits start rolling. And so then you should be good, and you can look and see how it goes all the way to the end. And then if you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, you can drag this out so that it ends up all the way at the very end. Okay? And if you really liked the idea of having the sound go ahead and fade out, you can drag this all the way out until the end of the credits, and then if you select it, you'll get the effects come up here, and you can take the last keyframe of complete silence and move it all the way to the end so that you can test it and see how it goes. And you see that it actually starts fading out so that you can get it all the way to the end of the song until the end of the credits. And so that might work out really well for you. And that's going to be it for the demo.